Okay, there we go. So we're recording. So I guess to start, if everyone will go around and introduce themselves. And we can start with Ashley if you want.
Okay, my name is Ashley Basinger. I am a senior at Indiana State. I'm majoring in sustainability and anthropology, and I will be moving on to the grad program in geography next year.
Yay.
And I also work at the Office of Sustainability.
And Jim?
I'm Jim Spear. I'm a professor of geography and geology in the Department of Earth and Environmental Systems. I'm a dendrochronologist and study trees and how they grow and what we can record from them, looking at climate, insect outbreaks, fire, that type of thing.
Katie?
Hey there, my name's Katie Udick. I'm one of the assistant directors for residential education over in Residential Life. I'm also a sustainability fellow and a little bit more of a sustainability hobbyist, and so have kind of jumped in on some different initiatives on campus and in other locations, and so get to partner with the sustainability office in my student affairs role.
And I am Garrett. I'm the graduate assistant for the Office of Sustainability at Indiana State. And Sarah Neely's here. Sarah was a student at Indiana State and now works here. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi. I'm just listening.
Awesome. So we just have some questions that I sent out to y'all. If you had a chance to look over it, again, sorry about leaving that in my drafts on accident. But really just throwing out your own thoughts or perspectives and then whatever else you've seen just to have sort of a conversation. And just to set the framing is, for myself throughout this whole situation, I tend to lean more towards pessimistic. So I've been trying to lean more on the optimistic side of things. So I don't know if we want to take that in this conversation at all, but I think maybe looking at upsides of things as well as recognizing some of the downsides, but recognizing what we can all individually and collectively do is hopefully a positive framing for this conversation. So I'll start with the first question. So communities have taken aggressive action to flatten the curve on coronavirus cases, and the cases are continuing to grow, but hospitals still have capacity at this time. So there have been a lot of mirrors to climate change, in that if we take aggressive action to reduce emissions currently, then one, we would reduce emissions, and then two, we would have more options in solutions to address climate change rather than be limited the further on we let this go. So the question is, why have communities responded to this pandemic in an organized and structural way, with recognizing some of the criticisms of how it's been responded to? But why is climate change different? And again, just your own perspective.
Yeah, I see. So with this whole issue, so coronavirus coming through, it's definitely been seen as kind of a major catastrophe. I think healthcare officials projected out looking at models about what like the death rate could be, how fast this could spread because it's a novel virus for a long time. And it's hard, it's the boiling pot of water with a frog analogy. If you slowly increase the temperature in the pot of water, the frog doesn't react. And that's what we're seeing with climate change. It's not just one perturbation or one big change. I've been teaching about it for 20 years, and we're still not getting the idea across that we need to make changes.
Yeah, it's kind of that idea of creeping normalcy, where maybe you've heard about it when you're a kid, climate change, oh, it's a scary thing, but as time goes on, you forget about it, or it becomes kind of something you're numb to, unless you're actively engaging in issues that are going on. So I don't know, that creeping feeling, whereas with COVID-19, it's like you said, Dr. Spear, it's a catastrophe. It's very current. It's very much, we have to deal with it, or there's going to be direct consequences right now.
I think there's a level too of feeling like they're able to do something. knowing some of the initial kind of steps of prevention or like reduction of COVID-19, wash your hands. Okay, well, I as an individual can do that. And so there was some of the more straightforward steps where like, oh, I can do this and it is going to protect me, and some of that intrinsic self initiating, but with kind of climate change and the greater global perspective on that, feeling a little less powerful. Not, some people may equate that to like, okay, recycling, like, oh, I can go put this there. And so for some people that is then a trend that can continue. But I think there seems to be maybe more of a little bit hope of like, oh, COVID can come to a reasonable stop or will balance out in some way. And I think some people have just become hopeless to what their ability to impact that is.
I definitely think people see climate change as overwhelming. It's like so big of a problem, so huge. The solutions that I like out there are nice because they solve many of our problems. So if we think about peak oil using up petroleum, if we think about pollution, and we're seeing this reduction in pollution right now with a lack of travel, if we think about all these things, the sustainable solutions that we put out there solve multiple of those problems. And I think having a concerted discussion or way to convey that, so biking and walking and making towns more walkable, it kind of builds community, it reduces pollution, it increases health. There's these great synergies for solutions that are out there to climate change. I think we need to package them and get them out to the public in a more clear fashion, as we've done with COVID-19.
Yeah, I think I just want to echo that. I had a conversation with someone on Facebook, granted, so Facebook conversation, right? But I was telling them that I think that the reaction to this has been so forthright and aggressive because we can see the direct impacts, like you all are saying. And I was telling this person that if some of the more drastic effects were immediately affecting people here in the United States, granted it is immediately affecting people here in the United States, but maybe not necessarily the majoritized white rich people, that there would be more of an individual response at least, rather than just a collective way. Hi, Rita. And so I just want to echo that. So the next question is sort of related to it, but can be taken a little different too, is how does the politicization of climate change and sustainable efforts differ or compare to COVID-19?
I'll let somebody else start.
I mean, one of my, once again, like novice views and almost, just kind of taking it from the approach of, you're commenting on Facebook, where I think some of it's politicized the same way, and it's politicized as a joke, as something not to be taken seriously, as a distraction. And so there's definitely still a lot of mixed messaging with then, with where I conveniently like to try and get my information. It just makes things murky. And so helping people be more connected to reliable sources, which then, are followed back up on. I know the post on Monday for Earth Week was really kind of reminding people of the importance of what are your political leaders saying locally, regionally, nationally, and even globally, and for different people that comes in different capacities of what they can pay attention to and what makes sense. And so finding those areas where you're willing to like, well, you know what, I don't really know how my state's addressing this, and maybe the nation's too big, but like let me focus a little bit more on what Indiana's doing and saying. And so I know that's some of like my own experience of like how am I understanding this, and am I getting good information?
Yeah, it's there's definitely comparisons between the two, and seeing that politicized process. And it was sad to see that with COVID-19 coming through, that there was a very different approach or perspective on it, depending upon your political party and your political leanings. With climate change, it should not be a political issue because we're all affected by this. The entire globe is affected by it, just like with COVID-19. I'm afraid there's vested interests in some of the issues. So if you're making money off the petroleum industry, you don't want to see things change. And that's where a lot of the power is today. So I guess it's inherently political because of that. But I think we need to be making our decisions, try to extract the politics from it as much as possible and look at the science. That seems hard for us to do today. Just sad.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, is the root of it is science. And it's interesting how politicians can accept the science on COVID-19 so quickly, but on climate change, they're slower to accept it. And I think you're right, Dr. Spear, again, and people have economic interests and maybe not like ethical interests. But yeah, it's really interesting because it's the same scientific method, right, that gives you information on COVID-19 and on climate change. But why don't we accept one as a society?
Yeah, and I saw an article recently talking about the difference in response between Germany and the United States, and why is that? And it's Merkel is a scientist at heart, so she really dug into the science to begin with and made decisions quickly based on that science. So even with COVID-19, we saw early on pushback on the science, and when reality kind of comes to finally confront the administration, they had to make changes. And that's coming true, I think, in climate change as well. At some point, the establishment can't ignore the effects of climate change anymore. And I think we're there. I think we're definitely seeing it. And hopefully we'll make the changes that need to be made.
And I think to kind of individualize it too, is that for some people, there's such a lack of accessibility to science, right? In some aspects. And so there seems to be a distrust in some aspects for some people. And what that turns into is politicians or whoever else who wants to politicize the economic disparity in oil or in other industry, take advantage of that lack of accessibility. That's just in my personal opinion and the conversations I've had with people, and to sort of bring an individualized level to it as well. So then go.
Quite a bit of discussion out there of like individuals don't know scientists to ask questions of. So talk to a scientist and ask, they don't have the access to a scientist and say, but what do you think about this? So I've had random conversations like going to a fast food restaurant and getting my order, and I'm wearing a tree ring t-shirt, and the person at the cashier asked me, what do I think about climate change? So then we had a 10-minute conversation about it. So I think we need those interactions, and I think we as scientists need to write more in a popular fashion where it's more accessible, where people can read about what scientists think about climate change.
Okay, so the next question. Despite the shutdown of many industrial operations and reduction in greenhouse gases, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of it is not going to be sustained when this is eventually over, right? And this period has also brought the halt to a lot of sustainability efforts and personal sustainability efforts. What negative impacts do we foresee for our local sustainability movements here at ISU and also in the Terre Haute area?
I personally have been more cautious with reusable items like bags. I feel kind of scared to take them to the store. Obviously, like Starbucks stopped taking reusable cups. And I see people being slower to integrate that back into their life once this is over. Because when will people truly feel safe to bring their own bags back? Or when will Starbucks start taking reusable cups again? And so I'm just thinking about small things like that and how that is going to be reintroduced to us. And when will different people feel that it's okay again?
And the recycling center stopped collections over this period. That's definitely a difficult component we can't recycle anywhere in Terre Haute that I'm aware of, and I've looked for a number of places. So personally, we've got enough space, so our basement is slowly filling up with recyclables until that opens back up so we can move them back off. It's kind of interesting thinking about the long-term supply chain, like petroleum futures have just dropped really low, and that controls the commodity market for plastics. So plastics were in a hard shape, and it's just going to probably be worse after this. So it's going to be hard to recover, I think, from a lot of this, especially in recycling.
Yeah, I kind of wondered, I guess part of what we're seeing, we are able to see some of those, like looking at the greenhouse gas emissions, and that they're literally like charting and showing like, oh, this difference with things being shut down. And so, tying back into some of the earlier questions, is this going to bring a different level of awareness? Will this also then tie in and help people's like motivation and kind of opinions behind it, where it's like, oh wow, we actually did get to see some literal change happen. But then also then just going more of like, with so many other things for people to pay attention to, and kind of what you remember from those, from these trying experiences, not necessarily going to resonate as strong with people. And as Ashley was saying, like some of those personal habits, I know myself, I went grocery shopping the first couple times, I was still bringing my reusable bags. I had them at one point say like, oh, they're like, we can't touch them. And I was like, okay, I'll load my own groceries, like solid with me. Ended up doing one trip where I was like, okay, respect of the grocers, I'm not going to bring this bag. I don't want to I want to show them as much respect as possible and safety as possible. And then just probably the amount of plastic bags I had in one grocery trip equates to, the past 3 or 4 years for me, because that's not something I have in my life anymore. So for me, that weighed heavy. But for certain people, we do know, hey, recycling, putting this can over here, bringing my reusable cup, saying no to a plastic straw. Those are habits we get into and sometimes need to build over time. And is this amount of time going to interrupt some of those habits where when we go back to the quote unquote normal, do we truly go back even to before they built in some of those things? So where can we help continue to encourage? Where do we see companies potentially helping bring that back into the forefront when it is acceptable, it is approved, it is safe? So yeah, I have that same kind of concern and challenge of myself. Like I know with when Starbucks on campus stopped taking cups, I was like, I guess I'm done drinking coffee until this is over. But then I folded and went and got a cup of coffee at one point. So, it is that balance.
Giving up coffee is a big change. Yeah, I hope there's some benefit that comes out of it as well. So there's a really neat, again on Facebook, I think it was a music video that was posted. I think his name is Dan McLean, who's a local musician in Terre Haute, but he posted a video out there of all the local eateries, and it was just like pictures of the different local stores and some music that he had written and played for that, saying support your local community and get takeout from these different places and help those small businesses along. There's quite a bit of talk about small business support, and it's not working as well as we'd like it to, but I think people might be becoming more aware of the small local businesses and want to keep those around. So I hope that that's a benefit that comes out of this, where people are really aware of that and put effort into supporting the small businesses. On the same side, I think they're going to have a harder time weathering the storm than the big corporations. So I'm concerned about our small restaurants or small businesses and trying to keep those going.
I also want to recognize that we have 2 other people joining us, and feel free to answer if you want, Sarah or Rita as well. But also don't feel the need to.
Yeah, so I think definitely, as Katie was saying, my plastic consumption has drastically increased during this time, partially because I'm a live-in staff member in residential life, and I've been trying to support our dining services here while they're still operational, and everything that they have is like to go in plastic containers or bags. So that has like tripled the amount of use I've had in like, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 years. But I'm still trying to support other people, so there's like that balance of like how much do I go to like to use those services compared to like what can I manage at home. But then also even like with the small businesses, like I've only been, I think, to get carry out food like once or twice, just because like I've been trying to just like minimize my interactions out in society, because being an essential staff member is difficult, like when you're interacting with people and you're like, I want to quarantine as much as possible. So I can definitely see like there's going to be a long like period of like transition time. So whenever we reopen the economy or whatever that actually means, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are really struggling to kind of pick up where they left off, or like try to go out to society and what that looks like. I think people will still get like food to go for a long time instead of going back to restaurants. And so hopefully that is supporting the small businesses compared to a lot of the chain restaurants. I know my mom posted on Facebook yesterday, she's like, I'm creating a list of all the restaurants who are actually helping like first responders or like essential staff, and like as soon as this is over, I'm going to go like as much as I can to those places, which I think was really nice, to kind of recognize like the businesses that have actually been trying to help out during all of this.
The fraternity next to me is mowing their lawn, so I'm being cautious. Thank you, Rita. I also want to add that one of my concerns is that, and I don't have anything to back it up, it's just a concern that I have coming into the future, is whether people become even more individualistic after this is over, and ignore community aspects. So I agree, I've seen a lot of those people posting and talking about support these restaurants and businesses. But I also am a little fearful that after it's all over, if it continues or if people are less likely to do that. He's coming back. Okay, so I'm going to talk really loud, close to the microphone, hopefully, and it won't catch it. So the next question is, some researchers have shown the relation between air pollution and high rates of COVID-19 death rates, right? Which makes sense because it's a disease that targets the lungs, and air pollution makes you more at risk for that, right? Industrialization and urbanization bring higher rates of air pollution, and some folks are saying this brings up the opportunity to look at redesigning cities. For example, they say we could start designing for people instead of cars. What other positive framing and outlooks for sustainability efforts do we see coming from this situation that we're in?
The pollution one is a great example. So there are a number of studies that are out there from United States Earth Observatory has done some, the the European Space Agency has done some looking at pollution from satellite in different cities and different around the world. And they looking at Beijing, just the examples I can think of, Paris, Milan, and then also Chicago and Indianapolis, they see a great reduction in nitrous oxides due to the lower driving. So not as much cars on the landscape. And there was one study, well, one write-up in the Atlantic talking about how this reduction has actually saved a lot of lives from death from pollution. And their study case specifically was in Beijing, where they found 4,000 fewer children died in the last 2 months, and 73,000 fewer elderly died in the last 2 months due to this reduction in pollution in Beijing alone. So we're actually seeing the benefit from this lack of driving, this lack of mobility. If we could do more public transportation so that we can still get around and we're not doing it in our individual cars, we could have this benefit of lower pollution.
I think one small thing I can think of is food waste. I think on an individual basis, most of us are being more careful with how we use the food we have in our house and using everything up as much as we can because we're trying not to go to the store and we're trying not to get sick. So I think that's interesting. I know me personally, I've been much more conscious of what food I'm throwing away because I don't want to throw anything away. And I think for me, that's a mindset that's going to stick with me.
I know, Garrett, you had kind of previously mentioned like looking at how there is some racial disparity, more so I think due to some of the urbanization. And so I like, not that I have facts or statistics on it, but interested to see as we do have to move forward with this, and if some of this planning does then help change some of the wrongs that exist in our nation's history. If we look at the redlinings of cities and how marginalized communities have been laid out, and how we see that truly impacting. I know one of the podcasts I listened to, Code Switch, did an interesting, so they did why the coronavirus is hitting Black communities hardest. And so that's just a resource to throw out there. I think they do some interesting discussions, and that's hosted through NPR. And so as we do potentially see some changes, I'm interested to see how that helps with some disparities that do continue to exist from our nation's, history.
And Rita or Sarah, if you want to give your opinion too, feel free. If not, I'm going to give my opinion. So I think while I'm thinking about it now and have been thinking about it, something that came to mind was the I don't know how I want to phrase it, but the transition to this e-communication and virtual world that we're now all creating together through work, through school, through whatever avenues that obviously we all have access to that some people do not have easier access to. And here comes the lawnmower again. I'm in the optimistic outlook that this e-world, virtual kind of communication will be further integrated. I mean, this will continue, this pandemic, right, for however long. And so the more we become more comfortable with it, I'm hopeful that we can start integrating it into things that we do. So for example, I was thinking about the office, we do sustainability fellows, right? And we could have anywhere from like 10 people to 2 people show up. But I'm wondering how many more people would show up if the option was available to Zoom in as well, and what that would look like, and how many more people you could get with that, and then record it and people could watch it later. So tiny things like that in a virtual world that helps sustainability efforts, right? Because then you think about specifically ISU, who doesn't allow for at-home work until now because they have to. And I'm wondering if the benefits are there for this to continue in some sort of capacity that contributes to sustainability efforts, at least on our campus and in our communities. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot with positive outlooks.
I agree with that, Garrett. I think we're all kind of changing our lifestyle for multiple months working from home. And for me, it's been something of a relief. It's always been kind of running nonstop, get up, get the kids to school by 8 a.m., get into campus, exercise, meetings all the time, taking the kids to soccer and everything else in the evening. It's been like nonstop running crazy. And now I'm leaving the house once a week to get groceries and stop by the community garden. And it's definitely a different lifestyle. It's quite a change. And it's much more relaxing. I'm not commuting the time that I was before, so I'm gaining extra time with that. I hope that a lot of that does stick with us in how we move forward, hopefully a more sane pace of life, if nothing else.
I think with this too, I have a lot of friends who are teachers based on like my background and like my major and things like that in college. And a lot of them are saying like this is going to be transformational time, at least for whether that's higher ed, but also like K through 12 schools as well, because I know a lot of people are like, well, if we just have a snow day, now we could just, like, if people can't actually physically be here, we could just do everything online. And trying to like push like the academic calendar and finagle that a little bit more so it's more balanced. So I can definitely see like that could be an issue, but kind of going back, like there could be a bigger disparity depending on the like the income levels or the school districts that have those ability or resources to be able to do that. Because I think that there are definitely school districts who are like, oh yeah, like this is fine, like we have all the resources that we can do, but there are definitely areas that are struggling to be able to facilitate all online learning. Based on where they're at in the like resource, like having internet access or being able to have a like a tablet or like iPad or whatever to do your classwork on that's provided by the school compared to whatever device your family might own. Uh, so I think that there's a lot to kind of come out of this in the education field, just no matter if it's K through 12 or higher ed.
And as a parent, it's interesting watching this process. So transition to online teaching, and of course we're taking on more of the duties of teaching, and the school is helping as much as they can. We're particularly lucky as a family with 2 parents so that we can trade off, so one of us can work each day and the other one can watch the kids, but it takes kind of full-time care on a daily basis to get them through their education for the day. But with that, we also have the opportunity to be more creative with their education and like do things in the yard instead of sitting in a classroom all the time. So I do see a lot of this change, and I think, I don't know, there's just like we're kind of realizing a difference in how we work. I think we are realizing a difference in how we do education as well. And Rita, I agree with you. It'd be interesting to see if we change the way snow days happen, or I don't know, maybe try to shorten the calendar where we can make productive use of those days. Of course, my kids really appreciate the snow day when they can go off and play in the snow for the day. That's a benefit.
Well, that was the last planned question, but I also want to recognize that we might have other things that we want to say. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for coming and for participating, but I also want to let everyone have a last thought if you want to. So we can go around and do that. If you don't have one, just say thank you.
Here, I'll hop in here real quick. I'm really grateful to be part of the conversation as I kind of like introduce myself. I'm definitely considering myself more of a novice, and this is, you know, so being in my 30s, a lot of these things are like, I'm aware. But really for me, it's just been in the last couple of years becoming more engaged in that. And so that's, I guess, kind of my call out to people of like, find your avenues of interest. And there is so many different components of sustainability as we look at the political, we look at the environmental, we look at the personal level. And so finding different ways to become educated and get involved. For myself, I give a lot of credit to a BuzzFeed video that had a turtle with a straw stuck up its nose, and giving some spotlight there to the hashtag Pledge Against Plastic Straw campaign. Indiana State is currently competing in that. I also support that, this kind of way to bring education, because it's also a small business run by women. And I really like that aspect of Simply Straws. So if you want to go to simplystraws.com and participate in the campus challenge, you can find Indiana State in the dropdown. And so for me, I use this company and this pledge to get myself involved and get other people involved. It's definitely become a lot more than that. So a lot of people be like, plastic straws. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's not that's not the end all be all. But if this is the door that's you're willing to open, to have that conversation. And for me, it went from straws to bags to, shampoo bottles, to the sponges in my kitchen. And so there's a lot of different aspects in my day-to-day life. And then as a result has also impacted my day-to-day conversations with people. And so I'm appreciative for this opportunity and just to hear other people talk about this and kind of hopefully help bring other people into the fold. So once again, if you want to participate, simplystraws.com, go to the campus challenge link. You're just kind of putting in your pledge to say, hey, I'm supporting this, and I've learned about it through Indiana State. And so you don't have to be Indiana State related. Friends, family, anybody from our extended community can jump on board.
Yes, I'll go ahead next. So Garrett, I wanted to thank you for putting this together. Earth Day is a great day to celebrate. It's kind of, I don't know, ironic that it's this 50th anniversary of the Earth Day. It's our ISU's 10th anniversary of Earth Day. And this is the Earth Day that we can't meet together. And of course, it's beautiful weather out. This is one of the few days I take in the year when I just don't do any work. I just go out to our Earth Day celebration on campus, help set up tables, do physical labor, which I really enjoy, and kind of relaxing and being outside in nature. So just kind of showing the background, it's nice to have kind of this nature and celebrate Earth. So thanks a lot for putting this together and allowing us to come together on Earth Day, and really appreciate all of this.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if there's one thing I've learned from studying sustainability and anthropology for 4 years, it's that humans are very resilient and we will make it through this and it's going to be fine. And happy Earth Day.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come on late. Enjoyed some of hopping into the conversation and talking about something that I feel passionate for, although I am still learning and trying to adjust and becoming more environmentally friendly. But yeah, so thanks.
Well, I want to say thank you again, everyone, for coming. I'm going to try to figure out how to post this on our website. We'll see if I can. I'll figure it out somehow. But I think this was really great, and I hope that people watch this and find some sort of hope in the conversation, like I said, positive framing in all of this. And to all the ISU people out there, if you're struggling with social isolation or quarantine, please reach out to the Student Counseling Center. They're still here for you. And I think that's it. Happy Earth Day, everyone. And I hope that all of you are gonna have a great rest of your Earth Day too.
I'm gonna send a message out to students as well. So if you're struggling in your classes, kind of from a professor standpoint, reach out to your faculty. I think all of us, we're all living through this together, right? So we all realize that there are issues going on. So if you're having a hard time getting through your classes, reach out to your faculty. They can help out. At the very least, they can provide incomplete so that they can extend your time for work into the summertime. So definitely, I mean, all of this is adjusting. We're all kind of getting through it. So just do the best you can and talk to people. Thanks a lot, Garrett.
Thank you for that. Awesome. Bye, everyone.